All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Actionable Alignment podcast. I hope you enjoyed. Oh my God, last week it didn't record the video, but I think this week it's recording the video. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode. A little bit of a sort of random yap where I just wanted to play catch up with you guys and explain what was sort of going on. Now, it's been the first week of my fat loss phase, which has been super exciting. And I didn't know, it could always be worse. And I think this is something really important to remember, is I had, being dramatic, every single stressor that could have been thrown my way was. But no, it was quite a good week for adherence. And I want to, I guess, really dive into why it was such a good week for adherence, but how you can use that information to propel yourself on your own fat loss journey. Now, we are currently 8 weeks exactly, pretty much date-wise. 8 weeks before our next end of year photo shoot for clients and myself. And other than that, it's what? So that means it's like 10 weeks until Christmas. Crazy. Not even 10 weeks until the end of the year. It's 10 weeks until 2026. And when I was talking to my accountant yesterday, I thought we already were in 2026. So life is just crazy. But getting down to business, I wanted to explain. So last week was the first week of my fat loss phase. And with the scale weight, this is something that actually didn't change too much. Even though my photos changed a lot, my waist measurement's lower, all that sort of a thing, my scale weight didn't change too much. And this is something where I'm not stressing at all because I know my adherence has been pretty bang on. And I know I've created a significant enough deficit to create some change. But there's been a few caveats. And so let's start with the reasons why it shouldn't have worked out. So when our body's a little bit more stressed, what we're going to find is that when cortisol is elevated, this is going to cause us to hold on to a little bit more inflammation and water retention. This is going to mean that when cortisol is sort of elevated outside of our training sessions, outside of our work blocks, this ends up sort of creating not really a nice space for new muscle tissue to grow, or even a nice space for the current muscle that you have to retain itself. So with that, last week, coming back from Germany, I was sleeping until about 1 a.m. and then I'd wake up, or sometimes I'd wake up at 11 p.m. and then 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And then most of the nights last week, I just woke up at 1 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep. So I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, I'm not checking the time. And I got a pretty good grasp of time and how long I'm sitting in bed for, because of how many nights I have spent sitting in bed, unable to sort of sleep because of my anxiety, that sort of a thing, in the mornings. Now, I would get up, I'd be like, fuck, I'll just get up and see what time it is. It'd be 1:45 a.m. and I'd be like, for fuck's sake. And so I'd be like, okay, I'll try and shut my eyes and go to sleep. I'd lie down and it would get to 2:15 and it would get to the point where I'd be like, I can lie in bed being awake and I can lie in bed ruminating about like top 10 hits of the worst things I've done in my life and top 10 reasons why people should not like me. And I was like, girlfriend, if you're going to be awake anyways, let's just get up and jump on the computer. So it was really good last week. I was doing so much work in the mornings before the sun was even up that it would get to the middle of the day, to get to like 9, 10 a.m. And I'd have breakfast and then I'd be like, I'm going to go to the beach for an hour, because it already busted out like 2 or 3 hours of work in the morning compared to what I had usually done in the day. So that was, I guess, a plus with it. But a huge thing is when we're not sleeping well, again, another reason cortisol can be elevated, but this can also cause us to have much more dysregulated blood sugar. And basically see it as this, as your little sort of benchmark, your little checkpoint. If you're sleeping less than 7.5 hours a night, girlfriend, or you're waking up in the night more than sort of 1 or 2 times, then you're not sleeping properly enough and your next day's blood sugar is going to be impacted. What this means is that you'll be a little bit more insulin resistant. And so being a little bit more insulin resistant, this can cause you to basically, you eat your meal and you feel a bit sluggish, then you might feel a little burst of energy, and then that burst of energy goes, you're back to feeling quite sluggish, and you're like, I just need that next hit of food. Okay, poor blood sugar regulation means that we eat our food and we basically just have our energy going these huge roller coasters instead of these steady increases and then steady drops over sort of a 4 or 5 hour period. So that's what happens when you're not sleeping enough. Then also the added stress of higher cortisol. This mobilizes the glucose from our muscles and puts it into our bloodstream so that we can run away from the tiger. So when there's no tiger there and we just have glucose or sugar running through our bloodstream, see it as like when you pour Coca-Cola over like car paint. Okay, when we've got the sugar circulating in our bloodstream, but it's not doing anything, it's not going anywhere. Okay, what ends up happening is it starts, for lack of a better term, eroding things, and it starts making things not function as well, and you feeling even more shitty. And so what we want to do is when we've got sugar in the bloodstream, so say you've just had a meal and you want to optimize your blood sugar after eating that meal, or optimize your blood sugar when the cortisol's high because the tiger's coming from the email that just got sent to you. This is where that, I hate that thumbs up thing. I'm not going to put my thumbs up anymore. Sorry for anyone watching the video or listening to the audio and not knowing what thing I'm talking about. But you know when you've got your camera on and it detects that you put a thumb up and it gives you a little thumb up emoji in a bubble? Why do we have that? Why do we need it? Anyways, but so basically when we are wanting to mobilize the glucose that's in our bloodstream, we want to direct it into our muscles, okay? We don't want the liver to dump out the glucose. We don't want our muscles to dump out the glucose. We want to be keeping it in the muscles or using it for the muscles where we can. So with this means getting up when you feel that you're a bit stressed, getting up and going for a little bit of a walk. If you've just eaten a meal, then you know in about 15 minutes that sugar is going to start hitting your bloodstream. So, okay, let's get up and go for a little walk. Let's start to downregulate the effects of sugar staying in the bloodstream, and let's start to redirect where that sugar's going and put it into our muscles so we can house in our little muscles, our little nightclubs, we can house more glucose and have less sort of bounces at the door refusing people entry. Because the more glucose, the more sugars that we can house in your muscles instead of in your other tissue, the better your body is going to perform and function. But also, it's a good sign of insulin sensitivity. So it means you tolerate carbohydrates better if they direct more into the muscles. Whereas if you eat carbs, you feel a bit sluggish and then like you're hungry 2 hours later, you're cranky. Cranky and hangry is the biggest sign that you have blood sugar dysregulation. Cranky, hangry, and anxiety. Recipe that just says, hey, this method for this recipe is blood sugar dysregulation. Okay, and it feeds into the cycle. So last week I had some of the worst sleeps that I've had since prep. With that, every single night again, 1 to 2 a.m. was our usual wake up time. It got to the point where, as well as that, coming back from traveling, I don't know if anyone else gets this. I know me and my partner both got it. Like my nose has been so blocked, and it's a little bit better this week, which is fantastic. It's been so helpful having my mouth and nose tape as well to keep it open. But like there were 2 nights last week I woke up and I actually thought I was suffocating because I'm so used to breathing through my nose, and then it would get blocked from me lying flat. So then I had to reposition my pillows to lie a bit more upright. Anyways, it was a bit chaotic. Last week I had 2 naps, which was good at like a 2 p.m. sort of a window. But generally it gets to that time of the day, my calls are just about to start. And so I was like, fuck it, we'll just get through the day. And then tonight we'll be extra tired, we'll go to sleep on time and we'll feel great. Then I go to sleep at like 8:30. And again, 1 a.m. and be like, ding, time to get up. So it was really tiring. Last week with training, I knew I just had to take it easy, a bit of a deload, especially not only coming back from travel and flight times and sort of body just being a bit gross from that, but also the fact I'd actually taken a good break off training. So over the 2 weeks that I was away, I trained like twice, I think, once or twice. Over that time, coming back into 5 days of training in a week, I was like, you know what? It's a deload week. Okay, we're doing exercises that feel good and exercises we enjoy so training morale can be high, and we're just focusing on getting a really nice pump and then leaving. And that was exactly what I did. Steps-wise, my steps are around 12 to 15K a day. So I'm now just no longer withholding myself from doing my morning walk, which was something I was doing in my build because we had to keep my steps down. And so now I can just, it's steps galore. I just do as many steps as I want, which has been fantastic. And around that 12 to 15K per day. Nutrition wise, I had all my food prepped. I had everything planned in my FitnessPal, my calculator. So I knew what I had to play around with. I knew the extra little bits and bobs that I had, and I absolutely nailed that. So I was so happy with that. Over the course of the week, my averages for everything look really good. My fiber's been a bit higher. Fireworks. Wow, guys, this is going to be a real animation for anyone watching the video. My fiber was a little bit higher, but it's actually been good since I was pre-Germany, when I would have too much fiber in the day, too many veggies, anything more than about 20 to 25 grams a day, I would end up pooping once, or if that, and it would be like a half sort of a poop. And now she's doing 2 or 3 poops a day, and at least 2 of those poops are like waist slimming, God-giving poops, which I'm just absolutely loving. My fiber's been around 31 as the average for the last week, so hanging around that 30 mark. I've been having so much more veg, but after Germany, again, having a lot of veg and my body tolerating it so well, and having a lot of veg and feeling really good, and having a lot of veg and moving my body more, coming back. And I think, again, having a lot of veg but moving my body more has helped massively. So yeah, things are feeling good. In training, instead of having some heaps of carbs pre-training, I just put some juice in my water with my creatine. And so overall, last week, adherence-wise, was fantastic. But I also got my period at the end of the week. So that's another caveat, that your girl puts on 2 or 3 kilos of water retention just leading into her cycle, leading into my bleed. And so with that, I had quite a few odds stacked against me where I could have said, I feel a bit shitty, I'm going to eat my feelings now. Or I feel a bit hungry, like I'm really stressed, I need to eat. And instead, the little hunger that I had, because I'd spent the last like 6 or 7 months not doing as much exercise and eating a lot of food, so focusing on my build, being a bit hungry, I was like, this is so nice. Like, it's so nice to wake up in the morning and be like, wow, my tummy is just dead flat. And your tummy should be pretty flat in a build, but I've had quite a few sort of stressful personal things on that my digestion was just like, girlfriend, sit down. But so coming back, everything's been really swell, and that first week adherence was absolutely fantastic. But in terms of seeing some good number changes, the odds were stacked against me a little bit. And so I didn't worry about that at all. I worried about what I could control. And that was, I know around my period, I got to drink some more water because you girl's going to be holding on to a lot of fluid. Okay, I know leading up to my bleed, because progesterone elevates, and progesterone is a little bit more of a muscle relaxant, this then causes the muscles in our GI tract to start slowing down a little bit, and food takes longer to get from your mouth to your butt. Okay, that's my professional science terminology for you all today. So with that, if we know it takes longer for food to go from A to B, then we want to make sure that we are addressing that and not just sort of eating like really heavy starchy foods, that sort of a thing. Leading up to your period, the best thing you can do for yourself is to really minimize any sort of like processed gluten and any sort of low quality dairy, and really try and keep it, if you are having dairy, lactose free, or sheep, that sort of a thing, goat. Halloumi as well is goat as well, but keeping it to a nice sort of degree of like really nourishing foods. And so I did all of that, and it was absolutely awesome. And so that first week, I knew, just watching my body after not training for 2 weeks and then training my normal sort of shift across the week, which is 2 days on, it's lower upper rest, lower upper rest, lower rest. So if you're hearing that, you're like, how does she do 5 sessions in a week? It's because some days I train on different days, which makes it really weird. I started my day 1 this week, Tuesday, yesterday, and next week it will start on, I think, Thursday, my day 1. So my training cycle is a little bit longer than that. Now, hello, my staff member's arrived. She's just knocked the camera. So now, in terms of last week, it was a really beautiful week, which is fantastic in terms of adherence. Again, she's on the floor. But there was something that I think really helped. And this is something where when I spoke to my coach and said, hey, I've started taking this supplement, okay, she was like, so, like, you're enhanced now. And oh my God, guys, I was like, no, I'm natty. What do you mean? Now, as someone who, in terms of natty bodybuilding, I've done both of my shows completely natural. The only supplement I took in my second show that could have bordered me to enhancement was yohimbine. And so I took yohimbine in my last 8 weeks. Yohimbine is an African bark. And so with yohimbine, if I have a look down here, it basically blocks adrenergic receptors in fat cells. It increases more norepinephrine release, so a little bit more adrenaline. But thereby, what happens then is in the morning when you take it fasted, it increases your adrenaline, and in that pocket of time that you're fasted and you've had your yohimbine, you can potentially enhance the ability of your fat burning, particularly in those stubborn fat zones. So I was taking yohimbine at the end of my prep the last 8 weeks. I don't think it counts as being enhanced, because I see being enhanced as taking physical hormones. So taking like obviously testosterone, Anavar, Clen. I don't think there's hormones, to be fair. I think they're just compounds, Anavar and Clen. But testosterone, growth hormone, that sort of a thing. So I was like, yeah, I'm still nutty. Like I took a bark, okay? Like you have caffeine, it's a bean. But yeah, and then when I told my coach, hey, I started taking this as of last week. Now, I'm no stranger to subcutaneous injection with supplements, peptides, that sort of a thing. But I was like, well, hold on, like a peptide, okay? A peptide is a chain of a particular like number and amount and different types of amino acids, which are proteins, which are made in the gut. And pretty much all peptides, as far as I know, but maybe this statement was wrong and I've carried it with me, are found, the chains of amino acids are found in our gut microbiome. So I thought I was still on the natty train, but I've been struggling a lot with my sleep, and especially in prep, obviously, and even coming out of prep, I'd really struggled with my sleep as well. So in terms of that, I knew coming into summer, I usually do once a year, I'll take melanotan, and I've done that for the last few years, and I'll take melanotan because it helps to basically, try to get some pros and cons for everything for you. But basically it helps to tan, obviously, but when you're more tanned evenly, it means that your darker pigment, so your really dark moles, that sort of a thing, the sun isn't absorbing more significantly into them. It's more sort of spread across. In terms of being used as well, it is legitimately used in clinics. I do think it's illegal in Australia, but generally it is off-label. So I think you do need to get it through a doctor. Anyways, so I'm not taking it. I was just joking, guys. No, but I've done that every year for the last few years. And so also when I got my boobs done, I was subcutaneously using BPC 157. Now, BPC 157 is basically, it's also known as like the Wolverine peptide. And so it's, in terms of the preclinical models that they have at the moment available, it's got really promising data for healing tendons, ligaments, gut issues, and nerves. Local injection near the injury allows a targeted effect for BPC 157, but also subcutaneously, it also goes through the whole body. And then it has a lot of potential for reducing inflammation. It also has cytoprotective benefits across tissues. And then there's low reported side effects. So with BPC 157, there's a lot of good stuff. They only recently, I think it was over the last 12 months, they made it much more difficult to access in Australia, probably because they realized people could, you couldn't sell it at the doctors. I don't know. It's not making everyone as much money as they want. It's not making I can't say the names or I might get blocked. But no. So it's one of those things that was legal to access in Australia. And then now I think it's a lot more difficult to get. But that's also something that I've taken with surgery to repair and recover a little bit faster from the surgery. So I'm no stranger to these sorts of compounds. And I do, because BPC 157 is made in the gut. Melanotan, we already make melanin in our bodies. We produce more of it. And then I was talking to my partner and he was like, yeah, and if you take testosterone, it's not like a male doesn't make testosterone in their body, but it still makes you enhanced if you take additional testosterone. And I just had this light bulb moment. I was like, duh. So I needed to get that out today. I needed to share with you guys so you know where I was at. Because I realized, and I said to my coach, and so with this as well, do not do anything like this without correct supervision and ideally an allied health professional. But one thing that I started taking after doing a little bit of research, coming back from Germany, I was like, I really want to prioritize my sleep. We've obviously got my fat loss phase starting, so I want to make sure my sleep's good. And if there's any other benefits to something, then great. But mainly I want to take it for my sleep. If there's any other benefits, I'm stoked. And so I was someone, I've taken melatonin quite a lot, and I used to take 20 to 25 milligrams per night, which is hectic, and still wake up, all that sort of a thing. Also, in comp had quite a low thyroid, and so that was another thing where I was like, these things have additional benefits, peptides. I'm already going to be taking a cycle of melanotan, which is only like a 10-day sort of a cycle, and then you can just do, if you want to keep doing it, you can just do it like once a week after that to maintain sort of your color, whatnot. But so I started taking a peptide called tesamorelin. And so it's got approved use in HIV lipodystrophy, and the standard dose is about 2 milligrams subcutaneous once a day. And so peptide enthusiasts out there can say that you can use more higher or variable dosing. But again, if you were trying to sort of get an accurate amount of how much that you could take, then you would again want to start on the lower end with taking or trying anything. Now, with tesamorelin and how it works, okay? Tesamorelin, basically, it's a synthetic analog of a growth hormone releasing hormone. So growth hormone releasing hormone. It basically stimulates your pituitary gland to secrete growth hormone, which increases IGF-1 and further downstream actions. So with that, it basically means that when you enter sleep, you have your first really big pulse. You do have little pulses in the day. You have your first really big pulse of growth hormone. And in that deepest sleep there, that first sort of initial pulse of growth hormone, that's where you can secure a really beautiful, restful, and rejuvenating sleep throughout the night by having that supported. And so I was like, that sounds awesome. Okay, listen, like I'm all for if there's a little bit of extra growth hormone, and that means that if my body's being encouraged to naturally produce more of it, it means I can build more muscle / retain more muscle in my fat loss. Sure, fantastic. I'm not going into a prep next to you guys. And so with that, I'm not like annoyed or panicked about sort of trying a different thing and doing a little cycle of it, especially when it's something that the negative side effects, from what I've researched, I'm willing, there's not too many negative side effects unless you really overdose on it or you continue taking it. It's a really low, gentle dose of this peptide to help me sleep. And there's added benefits of the growth hormone, which means I could build more muscle too. And so there are also some claimed benefits, which again, peptide enthusiasts, I'm not going to, guys, I hate giving you sort of, as much as I do give a lot of black and white sort of info, I hate giving like black and white info because I do think that people respond differently to things and people see and enjoy different things. And so I think that's okay. But some claimed benefits are reduced visceral fat, so especially abdominal fat. It can also improve body composition, less body fat, more lean. That's our growth hormone as well. It can possibly improve your metabolic parameters, so insulin sensitivity, which means you can absorb and utilize your carbohydrates better. And it can have positive cognitive and neuroprotective effects in your brain. Okay. That's absolutely awesome. And so when I was reading that and I was like, okay, if I'm already going to take a little bit of melanotan, then what's something that's going to help? And I had the help of my partner who's like obsessed with researching into that sort of a thing, and he's good friends with a guy who does a lot of research with peptides and that sort of a thing and has his own peptides shop. But so I was like, he suggested this and a different one to me, and the different one that my partner had suggested to me had a few more benefits for fat loss and reducing appetite. And I was like, I don't really, like, it's not my biggest focus as a female. I don't want to lose fat at a faster pace than what my body feels comfortable doing. Because both preps, when I've done that, and I've lost my 20 kilos over the 6 or 9 months, it's really fucked my body up. And so I'm not too fussed, okay? In terms of reducing my appetite so that I don't feel like eating as much food in my diet, like, I don't want to have a reduced appetite. I love food and I love my life with the nutrition that I have. I love being able to notice that, hey, if I'm feeling a bit hungry, it's probably a good sign my diet's working. Okay, hey, if I'm feeling a bit hungry, was that meal enough for me at this time in the day? There's all these beautiful things that I don't want to shut off talking to my body. And so that was where I chose over that peptide and this one. I was like, let's do some testosterone. And so I decided I would commit to doing 12 weeks of it, seeing how I feel, and I might, again, change my mind as I continue to sort of read about them. But I've started testosterone. And so I was on the call with my coach and she was like, so you're enhanced now? And I'm like, am I enhanced? And then I was telling my partner, and he was like, listen, if you weren't enhanced when you started taking the Himbine, you definitely were when you started taking the Tessa. And I was like, no. So I needed to share that with you guys because you know how big I am on being a natural athlete. And didn't sort of realize, but then when I was in it, I was like, I'm not going to change my mind. I'm like, I'm here now. And I've read the research. I committed to this before I knew if it was a natural substance. I thought Tessa was made in your gut. And then again, my partner pointed out, like, men still make testosterone in their testes, in their balls, but it doesn't mean if they take extra testosterone that they're still natural. And I was like, oh, you're right. So there's one more peptide I've been looking at, and it's also been touted as the beauty peptide. And it's something that, again, I'm going to trial a small dose of and see how my body responds as well. And again, you can read in terms of more information on this. There's definitely quite a bit online and you can do your own research. Please, if you're using ChatGPT, know that it has very harsh, unless you prompt the shit out of it, it's going to tell you how dangerous this is. But basically with GHKCU, that's the next one that I've ordered and I'm gonna trial for a little bit as well over these coming months. It's a really important thing. with our body, and over the summer, we're in the sun a bit more. We want to make sure that our skin can be nice and healthy, our hair, skin, and nails in general, nice and healthy. And so GHKCU is glycine, histidine, lysine tripeptide, which is bound with copper, and it acts as a signaling molecule. It modulates gene expression. It promotes collagen, angiogenesis, metalloproteinase regulation, and antioxidants responses and wound repair. Fantastic. So the claimed benefits from that is tissue repair, wound healing, skin rejuvenation, which means improved collagen, elastin synthesis, and reduced wrinkles, more hair growth / hair follicle stimulation. This is something in comp. I lost a lot of my hair on my head, guys, and it's something that I was so horrified when it all started falling out after comp. My mental health, like, I couldn't believe how much was tied to my hair, but tied to sort of my confidence, which I think was a huge thing as well. But yeah, so, and then it's also anti-inflammatory GHKCU and has antioxidant effects, and so possible systemic anti-aging as well. So GHKCU, tesamorelin, and a little cycle of melanotan. Okay, again, melanotan binds to melanocortin receptors, okay, especially in melanotan-1 on melanocytes, which stimulates eumelanin production, which is basically skin pigmentation. So with the benefits of melanotan-1, there is increased, obviously, skin pigmentation. You get a little bit of a more even tan, so you get more photoprotection. There's reduced phototoxicity / sunburn risk. And then in conditions such as erythropoietic, erythroprotoporphyria, EPP, it's approved to reduce photosensitivity. So in some countries, it's approved to reduce photosensitivity. It can also act as a mild appetite suppressant or have metabolic effects as well. So with that, again, I'm taking it because I want to have my skin a little bit more protected this summer. A, I get quite freckly, but B, I want a nice even tan. I don't mind, like, guys, I'm never going to gatekeep from you, okay? I got my first lot of filler when I was 18. I now have my last filler was maybe like over a year ago, I think. Now, something like that. Maybe not. I think it was in the middle of prep. And then I get a little bit of preventative Botox. So again, I know I'm never going to pretend to you guys that I am just an absolute angel with that sort of a thing. Like, I've got my boobs. That's also why I'll never try and give you black and white recommendations. I'll always sort of explain that there are pros and cons to things. There are reasons that things need more literature before the medical system deems them good enough to be in a doctor's sort of back pocket. And then there's also things that, like, doctors can't really make money off. So it changes things. But basically, a lot of the reasons that some peptides can be banned in countries is a lack of safety data, especially long term. There can also be regulatory classification, so it can be a research chemical or a drug or a supplement. And then there's also risks of misuse, okay? So off-label marketing, you don't know the potency, so you want to find an extremely valuable source if you were to go down this little bit of a rabbit hole, okay? Now, tesamorelin is medically approved in the US, okay? In GHKCU is more in the cosmetics / peptide research space, okay? And topical copper peptides and what's it called? Ingestible supplements, like ones that you eat, chew, swallow. They're not as regulated, but they are approved a little bit more for human systemic use in a lot of nations, okay? BPC is often sold as a research chemical or for lab use only due to a lack of clinical safety trials, despite it being legal only as of recent in Australia and it being known as the Wolverine peptide amongst sort of biohacking enthusiasts. I just think that's absolutely wild. Then melanotan as well, the drug form is approved in certain regions, okay, for EPP, but non-pharmaceutical use is often unapproved and considered unlicensed. So with that, I'm not taking any of these, okay? I'm just simply giving you guys the information. Yohimbine as well is a pharmacologically active alkaloid, again, sometimes regulated as a prescription, so with assistance. So again, we want to make sure, and I wanted to share with you guys as well, just my previous experience, where I'm at, what I'm doing, and I wanted to just let you guys know, again, with my fat loss phase, the best thing about Tessa, and this was the thing that got me on my little tangent and my little rant about the best thing about Tessa, you can't eat about 90 minutes to 2 hours before you take it. So you have it right before bed. And so your girl has not been nighttime snacking, which I think has made sticking to my diet so much easier, because that was my thing in my build, I would get stressed, or I would tell myself I wanted just one more snack, and then I would eat at nighttime and I would go over my calories, or again, I would just eat and not use the calories because I'm going straight to bed. I would convince myself I was hungry. Whereas now, because I'm investing in wanting to do this well, I'm strictly like, no, after dinner, after my Ninja Creamy, bang, no more. No more, because things that help to encourage healthy sort of growth hormone stimulus, they are much more difficult to, it's much more difficult to see a benefit from them if your insulin is present in the body. So if you've eaten carbs and your body's sort of processing them, so within the sort of 90 minutes to 2 hours after eating, then the testosterone is not going to be as effective. Okay. And so then it's like, you're not just doing this for nothing. You want to do it properly. Okay. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. And so I think that's made a massive difference in my adherence. And that's also why I'm really not stressing about my scale weight. It hasn't moved too much again, period. Not that much sleep. It started to go back down today, which is great, which recording this as of sort of day 6 of my cycle, 5 of my cycle. So it started to go back down today, which is really cool. But again, I know my adherence is key. Okay. I know my efforts are key. And I know that when it comes to seeing fat loss progress, my weight loves to do this thing where it just hangs out, and then it drops and it never goes back up to that number again. Okay, so I know first week of my fat loss phase, I've done my steps, I've done my training, I've done my meal prep, and I know that when I focus on my recovery, which I put an extra layer of focus on my recovery for my sleep this week, which these last 2 nights has been so much deeper and so much more beautiful, my normal tech boot sessions at recovery, and then as well as that, things like my baths, ocean swims, I'm prioritizing all that. So I know that this is working, and I can see the changes in my body already. Even if I'm holding on to a bit of water retention or a little bit of muscle inflammation, I can see the changes in my photos and my measurements. Okay. So I know that even though the scale weight might not be showing it, your girl is digesting things well, she's functioning well, training is starting to pick back up, and we're just going into our follicular phase. Hence the creativity where I'm just recording on a whim. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I hope, again, little pockets inside of my life where I'm at, I hope that they can inspire you to do your own sort of research to bring yourself the best results possible. And where you need help and assistance, where you need an extra expert, an extra layer, there is a reason that we thrived for so long in communities and tribes. So reach out to your team, reach out to your squad, and other than that, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.